I felt the drop before I understood it. One moment I was seated in the briefing bay, running probability calculations through my secondary mind cluster, the one I use for low-priority background tasks, and the next, the floor was gone. Not metaphorically, literally, physically gone. A rectangular section of the hull had opened beneath our feet, and all four of us were falling through amber-colored sky toward a planet that the Galactic Union had officially classified as unsuitable for most known life. I screamed. I am not proud of this. I have 3 academic commendations in applied xenobiology and a perfect score on the Union's theoretical survival assessment. I have memorized every clause of the emergency protocol manual, including the appendices, including the appendix about the appendices. None of that helped. The wind hit my facial sensory cluster like a physical insult, and I screamed. Beside me, Thyri, tall, silver-skinned, her 4 optical lenses spinning in separate directions as she tried to process the horizon, was making a sound I had never heard a Velhari make before. Later I would learn it was the Velhari expression for a feeling that does not exist in any other language. The specific grief of realizing you have trusted someone who did not deserve it. She was directing this feeling at Commander Drell, who was, at that moment, very far above us, and very much not falling. Brax was not screaming. Brax had gone completely silent, which was somehow worse. A Durathi going silent is like a river stopping. It means something has broken inside the calculations. His 4 massive arms were spread wide, his triple hearts almost certainly hammering at a rate that would have concerned any medical professional in the galaxy, and his yellow eyes were fixed on the canopy below us, a dense, writhing mass of bioluminescent vegetation that looked, from up here, almost beautiful. And then there was Kira. Kira Vasquez, human, age 22, from a place on Earth called Appalachia, which I had looked up once and found described in 14 separate travel documents as rugged, remote, and not recommended for those without experience. She was oriented face down, arms slightly out, and she was looking at the planet below us with an expression I did not have a word for yet. I would find the word later. The word was home. Our pods deployed at 400 meters. I had never been more grateful for a piece of engineering in my life. The deceleration was brutal. My chitin compressed against the harness in ways that would leave marks for a week. But we slowed, and then the jungle swallowed us, and then we hit the ground. The fungal mat saved us. It was 3 meters thick in that section of the forest, and it absorbed the impact the way water absorbs a stone, reluctantly, but thoroughly. I lay inside my cracked pod for approximately 6 seconds, running diagnostics on my limbs, before I noticed the smell, not unpleasant, wet and deep and alive, like something very large had been breathing in this forest for a very long time. Then I noticed the sound. A soft, consistent dissolving, like rain on paper, but slower. The pod was being eaten. I calculated that we had 4 minutes and 11 seconds before the fungal mat worked through the floor of the emergency pod and introduced itself to us directly. I announced this. Brax responded by punching the pod door, which opened it, which in retrospect was the correct approach, even if it was applied for entirely the wrong reasons. The first thing I felt when I stepped out was the rain. It was not like the rain I knew from my homeworld, which was cool and clean, and fell in organized vertical lines like it had somewhere specific to be. This rain was warm, and it came at angles, and when a drop landed on the edge of my sensory claw, it left a faint mark. Not damage, not yet. But a reminder that the chemistry here was not designed with me in mind. Thyri hissed. Brax looked at the sky with an expression suggesting he was reconsidering every decision that had led to this moment. I opened my survival manual implant and began cross-referencing atmospheric composition data. Kira stepped out of her pod, tilted her face upward into the rain, and opened her mouth. She tasted it. Brax stared at her. "What are you doing?" "Checking the acid content," she said, as if this were a completely normal thing to say. "Your survival implant can do that. My implant takes 40 seconds and gives me numbers. My tongue takes 2 seconds and gives me a feeling." She wiped her face with her sleeve. "Mild sulfuric, weaker than the runoff from the old mine near where I grew up. We're fine." I wrote my first note about her at that moment, on a piece of pod casing I had salvaged. I wrote, "The human evaluates threats through direct physical experience. This is either extremely sophisticated, or extremely dangerous? Possibly both. The first 6 hours were difficult in ways I had expected, and ways I had not. I had expected the gravity. 1.3 standard is not lethal for a Keth, but it is exhausting in a way that compounds. Every movement costs slightly more than it should. After an hour, your body starts doing quiet, subtle arithmetic, deciding which actions are worth the extra expenditure and which are not. After 2 hours, the math becomes harder to argue with. Thyre's species had evolved on a world where gravity was barely half of standard. By the end of the first hour, she was moving like someone had attached small, invisible weights to every part of her. Her silver skin had gone dull. She did not complain. Velhari do not complain as a cultural principle. But her silence was a different kind of silence than Brax's. It was the silence of someone doing enormous internal work just to stay present. Brax was generating heat. Durathi metabolism runs warm under stress, and stress is exactly what we were under, which meant Brax was becoming a small biological furnace in the middle of a jungle full of organisms that hunted by detecting heat. I pointed this out. Brax told me, in very plain terms, what I could do with the information. I noted the suggestion and moved on. Kira had already found the shelter site. She had not announced that she was looking for one. She had not consulted the implant, or drawn up a probability map, or requested group input. She had simply looked at the environment for approximately 3 minutes, walked 40 meters northeast, pointed at a section where 3 large dead trunks had fallen against each other at angles that created a natural lean-to, and said, "Here." Within 40 minutes, using fibrous stalks she tested before harvesting, pulling one free, bending it, smelling the break, then, and only then, deciding it was usable, she had constructed something that would keep the worst of the rain off, blocked the wind from the direction it was most likely to come from, and had a second exit in case something came through the first. She did not explain most of her decisions while she made them. When I asked afterward how she had known to include the second exit, she looked briefly confused, as if I had asked why she had decided to breathe. "You always have 2 ways out," she said. That night, something large circled our camp. I know it circled because I could track the sound. A low, rhythmic compression of undergrowth that moved in a consistent arc around our position, never coming closer than 30 meters, never moving away. The bioluminescent patterns in the canopy shifted when it moved underneath them, which meant it was taller than 3 meters at minimum. My implant cross-referenced the sound profile against known Vareth 4 fauna and returned 17 possible matches, ranging from mildly concerning to extremely bad. I woke Kira. She was awake in under 2 seconds, which I noted was faster than most species manage from deep sleep. She listened for approximately 8 seconds, then she lay back down. "We're fine," she said. "How?" I said. "Are we fine?" "There is something very large performing a consistent orbital pattern around our position. That's how you know we're fine. It's still deciding. If it had decided, it would have come in a straight line." She pulled her survival layer back over her shoulder. "Apex predators don't circle. Circling is doubt. Something that's confident doesn't doubt." She was asleep again before I could respond. In the morning, the sounds were gone. The compressed undergrowth showed a clear trail moving away to the west. The thing, whatever it was, had decided we were not worth the effort. I revised my note. The human understands predator psychology through what I can only describe as pattern fluency. She has internalized information that most species access through databases. The mechanism for this is unclear. The results are not. The second day, Kira fed us. This is a sentence I did not expect to write on a Class-3 Deathworld, and yet it is accurate. She identified 3 separate types of fungal growth that were safe to eat, not through the implant, but by smell, color, and what she called the feel of the surface, which tells you something about what's living inside it. She cross-checked these conclusions against our implants after the fact, with a kind of casual confidence that suggested she already knew what the answer would be. She showed Thyre how to collect water. The leaf structure on the dominant canopy species was curved at exactly the angle needed to funnel rainfall toward the central stem, where it pooled before running off. Cleaner at that collection point, she explained, because of the natural filtration in the plant's outer layer. Thyre listened with the focused attention of someone who was simultaneously impressed and slightly embarrassed. Brax refused to eat the fungus on principle until the third time his stomach made a sound that alarmed even him. Then he ate it without comment and did not look at anyone. I ate it and found it adequate. I was too tired to have strong feelings about food. Kira sat at the edge of a ridge that evening, while the bioluminescent canopy below us lit up in slow, rolling waves of blue and gold. I went and sat beside her, because I was finding that proximity to her produced a statistically measurable reduction in my general anxiety levels, which was professionally interesting and personally slightly embarrassing. She did not look at me when she spoke. "You've been writing things down about me all day," she said. "I have been making observational notes, yes. What's your conclusion so far?" I considered the question seriously, because she had asked it seriously. "My conclusion," I said, "is that you are doing something I do not have a name for. You are not surviving this place. You are not enduring it, or managing it, or tolerating it. You are reading it, like it is a language you already know." She was quiet for a moment. Below us, the light moved through the canopy in long, slow pulses. "I grew up somewhere that didn't want you to get comfortable," she said finally. "Not dangerous, not like this. But it had weight to it, the kind of place where you learn early that the environment is not your friend and not your enemy. It just is, and you either figure that out, or you spend your whole life fighting something that doesn't even know you're there." She paused. "Once you stop expecting it to care about you, you start to notice how it actually works. And once you know how something actually works, it stops being scary." "Does this place scare you?" She thought about that. "A little," she said, "but less than it should. And that part, the part that should be scared and isn't, that part worries me more than the planet does." I wrote that down too. Hour 58. 14 hours from extraction. Brax was asleep. Thyri was in a meditative state she had learned to use as a substitute for sleep in hostile conditions, and I was reviewing my notes when the undergrowth on the north side of camp went quiet. Not the good quiet, not the ordinary quiet of a sleeping forest, the particular, pressurized quiet of every small creature within 40 meters, deciding, at the same moment, to stop moving. I knew what this meant. My implant confirmed it, before I even finished the thought. A Virith crawler, Class 7 predator, pack hunter, sensor profile matching the apex entry in the planetary fauna database, was approaching from the north. Our emergency beacon would take 70 seconds to reach the orbital relay. The crawler would reach us in approximately 20. I woke Kira. She was on her feet before I finished saying her name. What happened in the next 9 minutes I will attempt to describe accurately, though I am aware that my account will seem implausible to anyone who was not there, and possibly to some people who were. Kira did not fight the crawler. She did not run from it. When it came through the northern tree line, 3 meters of dense gray musculature, secondary sensory fronds spread wide, reading the air with the patience of something that had never in its life needed to hurry, she stood completely still, and she watched it. It watched her. She changed her posture first, smaller, which I understood. Reducing apparent size reduces threat response in visual predators. Then she changed her breathing, which I recorded on my implant, because I did not know what else to do, and the change was measurable. Slower, steadier, deeper. She made a sound, very low, that did not sound like any language I knew. The crawler's fronds shifted. She had fire. She had built and maintained a small one at the camp perimeter since the second day, and now she used it not as a weapon but as a boundary. She moved it in her hands, not toward the crawler, not away from it, but parallel, tracing a line between them that the animal seemed to recognize as meaningful. Its fronds folded in slightly. The forward pressure of its body weight eased. For 3 minutes, they communicated in a language built from posture and breath and space and light, and I watched, and I did not move, and I did not make a sound, and Brax, who had woken somewhere in the middle of it, also did not move, and also did not make a sound. The crawler left. It turned, not in fear, not quickly, and walked back into the trees the way it had come. Brax spoke first. "What?" he said. "Was that?" "Bear behavior," Kira said. "Mostly. A little bit of dog." She looked at the fire in her hand, and then set it back in the pit. "Big animals don't want conflict. They want to know whether you're a problem. You just have to answer the question in a way they understand." I looked down at my notes. I had written, during the encounter. Her pulse dropped. I measured it. When the predator appeared, her heart rate decreased. Not through stillness, through something else. Something I do not have the correct word for. I thought about that word for the rest of the night, and I still do not have it. The closest I can find in any language I know is a Velhari term that translates, approximately, as the particular calm of someone who has already made peace with the worst possible outcome and is therefore free to focus on the present one. When the extraction shuttle arrived at hour 72, Commander Drell was standing at the open bay door with the expression of a being who had already composed 6 separate casualty reports and was deciding which one to use. He looked at us for a long time. He looked at Kira's necklace, the secondary fronds of a Virith crawler, dried and threaded on a strip of salvaged cord, and he opened his mouth, and then he closed it, and then he said, very carefully, "Cadet Vasquez, what is your assigned specialty?" "Navigation, sir," she said. "Xenoarchaeology minor." He said nothing else. He stepped aside and let us board. I completed my final note that night, cleaned up, fed, sitting in my bunk on the orbital station while outside the window. Virith 4 turned slowly in its orbit, lit amber and blue, and perfectly indifferent to everything it contained. I wrote, "I have spent 3 days watching a human being read a world that was not designed for her and find herself fluent. I do not think this is unique to Kira Vasquez. I think it is what humans are, not fearless, but practiced at absorbing fear into their operational capacity. Not adapted to Deathworld specifically, but adapted to the process of adapting, which amounts to the same thing in practice. I came here a cadet. I leave with a new category in my taxonomy that I am going to need considerably more research to describe accurately. Kira brought me dried fungus this morning. She said it pairs well with the tea substitute. She was right. I will continue taking notes.